pleasure to have Lesley Jane Seymour as my guest today. Lesley Jane is a media entrepreneur and founder of the Covey Club, a club for lifelong learners founded in 2017. She's an author and she's the host of the podcast, Reinvent Yourself. Using her personal reinvention story as a beacon, Lesley inspires listeners to realize that they can reinvent themselves at any age. Now, why did I invite Lesley here today? I invited her because I couldn't think of anybody better to talk about reinvention. And I get so many requests from so many of you listeners about this topic. So Lesley, thank you. Yeah, exactly.
Good. That's good. You're right in the right zone. I'm the reinvention lady. So
I know.
By accident. I didn't go out there looking for it, but it's kind of what people know me for. So it's fine.
Okay, well then let's just start right there. Let's talk about that. So talk to me a little bit about your story and how did you get to be known as the reinvention lady?
Well, as they say, things happen and then you respond, and that's what happens. You know, my last magazine was More Magazine, which was for women 40 plus. It was terribly successful. I was there for 8 years. It was fantastic. And as you know, publishing just really started to suffer. This was 2016. And especially if you were in an area where you had older readers, where advertisers decided that they didn't want to talk to women like us who have money, time, and expertise at buying things. The whole thing is so nutty because you would think that, you know, we had a big readership. We had 1.5 million readership, and they all had money. It made no sense. It was just simply a taboo. It was all these people who said, if I advertise to women 40 plus, the 20 and 30-year-olds won't come, which was absolutely a falsehood. If you spend any time with 20 and 30-year-olds today, you would know that that's completely wrong, because I have a 20-year-old who, and even at the time and at More, all my clothes, all my products, everything were in her closet. I had to go find them, get them back. So it was just a fundamental misunderstanding, which I think still persists. And I'm hoping that through change and through, supporting women 40 plus out there, we will make people understand that we're not dead. We're not going anywhere. We have a long life to live after 40, sometimes another 40 or 50 years. And we get to decide when we're done. What my mantra for Covey Club is, it ain't over until you say it's over. And so when they closed the magazine, my readers were very angry about that. And they came to me on social media and said, do something else for us. I had never been an entrepreneur. I'd studied entrepreneurship because so many of our readers and the people we wrote about became entrepreneurs, because a lot of them were either pushed out of corporate life or aged out or something out. And they found it freeing to leave the confines of something that was meant for men and was focused on the young. And so I was like, I don't really know what that is. So I went to my readers and I said, take a survey. I'm a big researcher. And 627 of them took a 54-question survey to the end. And I built Covey Club off of that. Covey is a small group of birds. And it's a little tiny flock of, it's supposed to be quail. And I wanted something that was small and intimate. And that's really what we do. We work, I started out thinking I was going to publish this is so insane, a weekly magazine, an original weekly magazine online. This was 6 years ago. That's how
insane. Not so
it was insane.
I don't know.
By myself.
Oh, by yourself. Okay.
By myself.
Right.
No investment, just using the money that I got from my severance. I ran out of money and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do it by myself. Of course, it was insane. And I really leaned into the club part of it after that, which I really, really enjoy. And slowly over time, I would publish all this stuff about different parts of women's lives, 40 plus at that time. Nobody else was in the field. They were all being shoved out because there were no advertisers. There were very few people online doing anything. And lo and behold, what people kept coming back to me for was the reinvention discussion. And so I finally said, okay, reinvention was a huge part of More. And it's a very upbeat, positive thing, which is saying you have another life. You have you have a couple of more acts in you, and you don't have to just be that first thing that you started in your 20s. You've got maybe two more things going on. And so I decided, okay, let me dive deep into this. And it's, it's a very positive, very rewarding thing. And then through COVID, I really leaned into the teaching part of it. I love to teach. I was an adjunct at NYU. And we really started to discover how to teach women to reinvent themselves. And I can firmly say now that we take women who are drifting, who are stuck, who are fearful of being pushed out, who have just been pushed out, who are starting an entrepreneurship at a slightly older age and want to know, how do I do this? And what we say at Covey Club is we hold a space for you while you figure out what's next. And we expose you to experts in everything from how to fix your LinkedIn file, to how to do a video interview, to how to manage your LinkedIn, all the way through menopause, whether to take HRT, all the things around you. And you could be reinventing your relationship with your older children. You could be, it doesn't all have to be career, but it could be any of those things. We do personal and career at the same time, because we also find that at this stage of life, we are such experts that if we get to know each other and I need help with SEO, I'm not going to go looking on Upwork for SEO help. I'm going to look within the club. I have women who know SEO and they've been doing it for years and they're experts at it. Why would I go anywhere else? And it becomes a community of support for you if you're taking a big new job and need somebody to bounce things off of. That will happen. Some people have been out of work for a while and they take a new job, and you know what that's like. You don't even know where the bathroom is, and you're getting weird vibes from somebody who didn't want you to take that job or is threatened or whatever. And you need that group behind you to say, where you can bring it back and say, does this seem odd to you? Like what is this person trying to say, or a weird boss or whatever. So we help through all of that. And some people move through Covey like it's, a program in about 2 years or 3 years, and they go off, they get a big new job and they leave us. And I'm trying to figure out how to create like a little alumni panel or something, or they stay with us and they hang with us through their reinvention. So it's very rewarding and very interesting. And I love the high touch. I really, in magazines, we were very distant from our reader. We could get a letter, we could write back. A lot of times it was hilarious because people would, send us crabby notes about, and then you'd write back and they go, oh, I didn't know you were actually going to read this. I'm really sorry.
And you're actually a person on the other end. Right.
There's a person there that they didn't know. So I love the high touch part of it. I love really seeing how women's lives can change with small movements that we can teach you to do. I'm a big fan of small changes that create momentum and lead up to big changes.
Yeah. Well, there's so much in what you just said, right? So there are so many pieces. First of all, the whole notion of support and network, right? And so also the I'm not alone type of thing.
That's the huge part. And that's the connection to magazines, is that magazines were there when I was 10 years old to let me know, even though on my block, I was the only kid with divorced parents and I was told I couldn't play with the kids across the street because it would be contagious. But now that's what we've become, is to let you know, you're not the only person going through menopause. You're not the only person losing your mind. You're not the only person, but we live in this isolation.
Right.
And you have to get out of that isolation to understand.
Well, and it's interesting, Lesley, because you talk about, being forced to feel as if you're done. And what I see in the work that I do, and I work with quite a few executives, both men and women, and especially a lot of women executives, that at a certain point, and I don't know if it's even age, I get the age. We're going to talk about ageism a little bit, but at a certain point, there's a place where it's like, okay, I'm not being forced out,
just bored,
but I'm not happy. I'm done. It's like almost like a soul search. It's like I've reached this pinnacle. I'm this executive and this isn't doing it for me. Right. And then we're seeing a lot of data coming out on women who are facing that. The purpose isn't there. There's something not there. And so there's reinvention there as well. It's not because you have to. It's because
You want to.
you want to. It's like what all these things I thought were going to do it for me aren't doing it for me. It's not making me happy.
Right.
So what are your thoughts a little bit about just reinvention in general? Like, what do you think reinvention is? So you're the reinvention queen, so I'm going to ask you a little bit.
I think, I think reinvention is a super American thing. There is a moment in, and I've got to get the quote exactly right. There's a moment in Mad Men where Draper says to, what's her name? His assistant who gets pregnant and she has the baby. And he goes to see her at the hospital and she's got this baby. And he says, just forget about this like it never happened, and no one will ever ask you any questions. And that is how the American experiment is built on reinvention. People came from around the world, changed their names, changed their backgrounds, and completely reinvented themselves. Here, Hollywood's all about reinvention, right?
Yeah.
And it
California.
is in our California. I mean, it's in our blood. And so to me, it's a very American thing. And it's also a longevity thing. When, the way I look at it is, Romeo and Juliet had to get together in their teens because they were dead by they were 25, right? So we have this incredible longevity coming at us. It just makes sense if you're smart and you're curious about the world and you're interested, you're going to have this longer run. And why this, remember the old idea of retirement, for instance, was created during the Depression to get more people to work. People were working 12, 24, 18 hours a day. And what they needed to do was cut the work week to bring more people into work. And that's what they actually did. And it was a fake number. It was people would die around 65. So they were like, okay, let's just tell them that's the cutoff there. Let's shorten the days, shorten the weeks. Now let's bring more people back to work so that everybody can share in this. And this idea of you were going to save up for retirement and pull the plug and walk away and go play tennis for the rest of your life. Now, for some people, that may be great, but it makes no sense to me and for my group of, if you're an interesting, intelligent, engaged person, why wouldn't you continue that all the way through? Like, I don't want to be on permanent vacation. I love vacation. I take vacation. I make sure I do. But permanent vacation? I don't know about permanent vacation. I'm engaged. I love to be in politics. I love to be involved. I think the idea of pulling the plug, and we do see in studies that, a lot of people who've been very involved with work and their communities and who do pull the plug, it's bad for their health. It's bad for their mental health. I mean, there's all kinds of studies of mortality that go up when you do that. So it's not for everybody, so
No,
so you're going to reinvent. How are you going to do the same thing as you were? I'm not the same person I was when I was 20.
That's right.
I'm not the same person I was when I was 40.
That's right.
And why wouldn't you be seeing new things that interest you and that you want to explore? And so it just seems like a logical, very logical sort of
progression
road. Yeah, it's a logical road for a lot of us. If you're at that questioning, is there more? Is there something else out there for me? Even though I've had a great run. Look, I mean, I had a great run at, 4 different magazines. And, I could have gone out and found another magazine when they closed more. And I was like, why? I've done 4. Like, I don't want to do this again. There's got to be something else that's more interesting.
Yeah. And so you bring up quite a few things here that I just want to touch on because I think they're so important. The one thing is this whole notion of there's a perception that you're done. And so I talk to so many men and women. So it's not just women, but I think women have a harder time because that's a whole other issue, right? Of expiration dates or whatever, however we look at it. And the media doesn't help us.
No, the media is really bad about this.
Yeah. But so one of the things I hear a lot is this notion of there are some 50-year-old women who are executives in several companies, and they'll say, I'm not even looked at for, it's like, I don't have any more runway, or I'm not looked at for a promotion because she's set in her ways or whatever, which is so far from the truth. It's
total BS.
stereotypes, right? We talk about
Old stereotypes, totally wrong.
and this ageism thing that now we're
Ageism.
using, this buzzword is coming out so much, ageism. There's a magazine called Ageist, online magazine.
Yeah.
But so we're, and Maria Shriver now is hosting these things about ageism. So it's starting to get some traction as people are aging and realizing exactly what you're saying. But the question is, it's so ingrained. I mean, I see it, like I see it. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to my husband the other day. I'm watching television, and I'm seeing, this elderly couple, in their 50s and 60s. What do you think can be done about that, just in the media? You've been in the media business for so long.
Well, we have to mine our own prejudices. We've done a lot of classes at Covey. We do classes where you bring in experts to talk about things like this. And one of the most enlightening ones, I don't remember who did it, but it was somebody who studied this. I think it was a guy who left one of the big ad agencies, and he set out to study ageism because he saw that the agencies didn't understand age at all. And one of the things that we don't realize is we've taken this on ourselves. We say to ourselves, when we can't remember something, when you're 30, you can't remember something. You're like, where is it? Where did I put my keys? When we put our keys down and we're a little bit older than that, we're like, it must be age.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh.
And we fall, it's so ingrained into us. And if you notice, one of the big, huge disparities and problems with online stuff right now is that there's this gap between what is 40 and what is 90. And between there's a lot of people that look very different. But the people who are putting these commercials together and all that, God bless them, they're like 35 years old, and they've got to have a person with white hair, and they've got to have a person who's in a granny dress.
Exactly.
So that's the stereotype. And that actually happened to me once when I wrote a piece for Facebook when I turned 60. I was really excited about turning 60. There were a lot of people who didn't make it to 60 in my business.
Right.
And so I was, I said, I knew if I pushed that button, I would never be hired in corporate again. And I was like, screw it, I'm going to push it anyway. Anyway, it got picked up in a lot of places. It did very well. Different magazines picked it up. The last one to pick it up was a younger magazine, online magazine. And I don't pay much attention. They just wanted to reprint it. I'm like, fine, whatever. And then people started sending me notes going, Lesley, what did you do? Did you change your hair? It doesn't look like you. And I had a picture of me talking about turning 60. And I pretty much look the same as I do now, a lot more wrinkles, but pretty much long blonde hair, the same thing. And they had taken my picture out and put a picture of a jaunty looking woman with short white hair.
Oh, stop.
And yeah, because I didn't fit with what 60 looks like. I'm 66 now. I probably don't fit with what 66 looks like either.
Whatever that's supposed to be. Right.
So, but that's the problem. So people want you to fit that stereotype, and when you don't, they're worried that people aren't going to get the message, the message they're sending, whatever that is. So we need to change the visuals, a lot about changing visuals in advertising, a lot about changing visuals in all the things we do. As a online publication, I have a hell of a time trying to find great pictures of women who are 40, 50, 60 and don't just have white hair. Like, that's not the indicator anymore. I want to see women like us.
Right.
And can't find them on the sites that have like free photos where we all go to. They're literally, it's like women 35, and then it jumps to women around the world who are like 90. It's like, there's this like
Betty White, right. The
invisible thing.
The Betty Whites of the world. Yeah.
Yes, it goes right to Betty White. Like, they can't tell the difference. There's no gradation.
Yeah.
And, and funnily enough, when I had the visuals done for Covey Club, this is 6 years ago, I went to this fabulous illustrator. He had done covers for NYU. He's very fancy. He did really charming wonderful visuals. And I gave him the brief, what it was. It was women 40 plus. They're lively, they're active, whatever. The visuals that came back, you would die. They were little ladies in slippers with long cardigans with their hands in their pockets, little buns and dangling earrings, and sitting. And if you made them look at a computer, they were like sitting at a computer. I was like, who is this? And it was a young guy who was 35 years old living in Brooklyn. I'm like, have you gone outside and looked at women 40 plus? They don't look like that. Look at my hair. And I had to send him pictures of my friends in like mini skirts, high heels, but he was a young man in Brooklyn and had this stereotype.
And what you're talking about, Lesley, which is so true, is the stereotype. It's the stereotype. And I think we're unconscious of it.
Yes.
Because I think it's so pervasive in the culture.
So pervasive.
Talk to me a little bit about what advice would you give for people who are in, mid-career, maybe, late 40s, 50s, even 60s, going in, whatever their age is. Yeah. And they're feeling like, wow, I'm not done. I'm just getting started. And they're feeling like the society around them is making them feel like they're too old to start something, or you're 50, how are you going to start a new business?
And that's, you just, number one is you just have to ignore that. And some of the average age, I think the average age of entrepreneurship now is 39. And it's not the image of the 20-year-old Mark Zuckerberg that it was 20 years ago. So remember that. Number two, older people, and especially older women, are more successful because they already have their networks. They already have money behind them. They already have skills. You're going to leap ahead of other people who are, when you're 20, you don't even know, you may know the tech, but you don't know how to get people on board with you, and you don't know how to make alliances, and you don't know how to barter, and there's a lot that you don't know. Yeah, you might know how to navigate this computer better than I do, but there's a lot of skills that you have. And so many people are finding second lives and third lives. There are people who reinvent themselves within their companies, where they say, like, I'm really like this one PR woman who we just put out. She was like just done with the PR in one of these big things. And she went to them, she got her coaching license, and she went and she said she made a case. She'd been there for like, I think 30 years or something. And she said, this is where we are. The people need coaching within this company to do whatever. Anyway, she pivoted within her company, and she applied her coaching within her company, and it became her new role in the company. So there are things like that you can do. Entrepreneur, you can also, if you want to stay where you are, say you need the paycheck, you reach a certain level. I mean, this happened to me at Moore. I knew, it was getting to be like, we were always on the chopping block. We were always the thing that never fit with the company. Every quarter, it was like, oh my God, are we going to make it through the quarter? And I needed something else. I knew how to do the magazine. We were having the best years of our lives. But I couldn't take the stress all the time. And I also knew my bosses were very stuck in their ways, and they wouldn't try anything new. I came up with I was like, okay, let's do something radical to save the magazine, like get rid of the ad department and let's just do it as straight, I said, just straight editorial, 100 beautiful pages, put it out there for $20, because we had a very upscale audience who would pay that. Oh, can't be done.
Coming from that industry, I totally get that was sacrilegious, what you were saying.
Yeah, but it would have saved the product. Yeah. It would be another way to go at it. I mean, there's no reason why More Magazine couldn't have been that and Covey Club together.
Right.
But no one wanted to listen. So I knew if I left, they were going to close the magazine. So I knew it was just, when was it? I was there for 8 years. And by about year 5, they kept changing my publisher. Every year it was somebody new. And this is not the way to do business. What's going on. So I had to keep that. I had 50 people who were employed, which we needed to keep. I was making a decent salary. It wasn't time for me just to walk out on a big salary. And so what I did is, on the side, I went up to Columbia and got my master's degree in sustainability. And what it did is it opened the door for other kind of thinking. there's those moments in your career where I call it stirring the pot. You're kind of like, you can stir the pot and you can multitask 5 other things because you've stirred that pot for so long. You know exactly when to turn up the heat, turn it down. You know that pot so well, right? You could manage that.
Yeah.
Sometimes not everything is going to come from that pot.
Yeah.
Sometimes the reinvention needs to be over here in a different area in terms of a hobby, in terms of a new thing you might want to explore. Expanding your own self can lead to all kinds of different things. You don't know what. I didn't end up going into sustainability. I ended up finishing my degree anyway, because Covey Club came along.
Yeah, see, isn't that amazing? As you talk about that, all the possibilities that open up that you're not even aware of. So I think that exploration mindset that you're talking about is so big because, and so much of my audience and the people I work with are afraid sometimes to get out of that comfort because they're so good at it.
It's scary.
Especially when you're really good and you've achieved so much. It's like, I won't be competent at this.
You won't, and you will
and
not.
And that's okay.
You will not, and you will feel like an idiot, and you will have to ask a 20-year-old, what button do I hit? Tell me what, and you're going to feel like a moron, but the
persevering in it
and hanging in there, and that's the learning. That's the learning.
But look at how much that served you.
Yes.
Going forward.
You just have to be willing to be an idiot again.
Yeah.
Because that's where the learning is. The learning is a beginner's mindset and letting go of the fact that I'm the world's expertise in whatever it is, but now I'm going to learn something totally new.
It goes back to that, who is it? Carol Dweck with the growth mindset, right? Versus the fixed mindset, right? It's just
100%.
Being a learner, just being open and having that ability to say, I'm a work in progress.
And I say that, I mean, I screw up. You'd be amazed how many times I screw up, and I've screwed up, where I buy something for the website and I bought the wrong thing because I didn't ask the right questions, but I didn't know the questions to ask. I mean, it's all a learning process, and you learn to be kinder to yourself during this process and realize that, hey, I'm the world's expert in women's issues, and I can take an article and bring it, cut it in half and publish it, at a certain level in, half a day.
Right.
But I'm still learning. I mean, I'm, still learning all this stuff and I'm learning about reinvention. I'm watching women do it. I didn't even know what Covey Club could be. I didn't know that we could teach women how to reinvent themselves. When I came out of the door, I couldn't have, I'm very much about, I can only sell what I believe in and what I know, and I have to have the research to prove that I can do it. I'm a very bad salesperson. I can't sell you snake oil. I'm not good like that. It's just not my thing. Not my thing. There are people who can do that. God bless them. I have this face that only can sell what I believe in. Right. So I had to wait till I got there. And it wasn't until I got my research back from the people who'd been through Covey where I could really say, this is what we can do for you. But that took 5 years, where I know when I get on the phone with somebody who's new and they're living in, Oshkosh, Wisconsin or wherever, and they're like, yeah, I'm like, I feel lost. I'm stuck. I'm not sure where I'm headed. I've been in this for a long time. I've mastered it, but I just feel like I'm not excited anymore. What do I do? And I'm like, gotcha. I hear you. You're not weird. We hear this all the time. You just haven't talked to the right people. It's okay. In 2 years, I'm going to have you out on the other side, and you're going to be going like, what should I be choosing? You're going to be talking to your group in Covey and going, okay, I got 3 offers. I don't know which one to take. Can we meet? And I've seen it happen.
Yeah. And the nugget that keeps popping out as you talk, Lesley, is that it's not linear. It's not a linear process. And I think that is a big obstacle for people because they expect to have it all figured out. And part of it is an exploration. And so you're not going to have it all figured out. Even starting the business I started, several years ago in 2014, when I started it, I didn't have it all figured out. It was just constantly emerging and evolving, and then trying something new and trying something new, and then it explodes. But that's how it works. It's not, well, I've got to have all the ducks lined up. And I think we do ourselves a disservice when we
Well,
think,
and that's very female.
right.
We're told, and you probably see this the way I see it too, which is, the old story of there's a job and they put out the prerequisites for it, and the guy looks at the ad, and he's got 50% of it. He raises his hand, he goes, I'd be perfect,
I'm qualified. Right.
and the woman has 95%, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna go back to school and get the
Yes, it's so true.
right? Like, we've got to be perfect because God forbid we do anything wrong, or don't know our stuff or whatever. And it is the unknown. And many people said to me, and they might have said this to you when I first decided to do this, they said, but you have such a good reputation, why would you take this chance?
Interesting.
Like, people know who you are, they respect you. And I'm like, well, I already own that. Like, are they gonna, so what if they think I'm an idiot? Like, what? I gotta go on. I'm not done. So
actually, that reputation is what carries you forward. I mean, that's the,
you own it.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that you don't.
Pocket.
Yeah.
No one takes it away. Exactly. I own that. I have that. So, maybe this won't go so well. Maybe the next thing I do will. I don't know. But
I think that mindset and that attitude, I think, is so important to highlight, because that's the, I don't know, almost a secret sauce there is not being linear, not expecting to have all the answers, not having it all planned out. That's what I hear from you.
Yeah. And I'll just tell you, I'm a very linear person. When I was in corporate, I tend to think very linear, and I would have publishers who would be talking loop to loop to loops around me that I'd have to follow them. And then as I became an entrepreneur, it is exactly what every book tells you, is that you're going to run into a wall, and you are either going to say, okay, I'm done. Like when people didn't want to buy the online magazine for any kind of money that would support what I was spending on it. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm done. Or I could lean into the club part of Covey and say, what does that mean? Like, what is a club? What could that be? And that is literally, you just keep running into walls. And there are many times where you say, maybe I'm done here. Like, maybe it's over. Maybe it's not going to work. And then you pivot into something else. And that's kind of how it's done.
I've asked you a lot of questions, and I'm going to ask you one last question. Just what other words of wisdom or advice would you give to people who are thinking about reinvention that you haven't offered today, or that we haven't touched upon?
Is that the thing that keeps people from reinventing is that it seems too big. I would say, look at the word reinvention. And if you feel like you have to reinvent some part of yourself, take it down to that small part. Maybe you want to exercise more. Maybe you want to be a better listener. Maybe you want to have better relationship with your kids or your spouse. Maybe remember that it doesn't have to be your whole life being reinvented. And also, there are ways to, the big barrier to reinvention, any kind, is getting started. I spend a lot of time in Covey Club teaching people how to make things smaller and how to make them repetitive so that you can get the snowball effect of things happening. We just came off a 30-day reinvention challenge where I taught them how to do little 5-minute things that they plugged into a calendar for every day, whatever their thing was going to be, whether they wanted to, run 3 miles, or they wanted to clean the closet or clean the garage or whatever it was. And it's incredible how once you get over that bigness thing, people don't do it because it's so scary and big. And if you just start in the little teeny area, say you want to change professions, right? And I know these people, they're in my podcast, a doctor, a radiologist who wants to be a writer. Who's going to listen to a radiologist? She wants to write fiction, right? Where do you start? You start by following people who write the kind of fiction that you're interested in. You start by going to conferences where those people talk. You start by reading those books and looking at who publishes them. All those things are tiny, step by step by step by step things that you can do one day at a time. You don't do 10 a day. You don't dedicate your whole weekend to it. It's this slow build. And before you know it, as I say to everybody, if you're a couch potato and every day you did, the first day you do a half a walk around the block, the next day you do the full walk, the next day you run a quarter of the block, by the end of a month, it's 30 days, you've run several miles and you thought you couldn't do that. And what's really interesting is to see those people, and that's what's so energizing the other night, is like some of these people now, they're on such a roll. Like this one girl she started out cleaning her closets, and now she's doing her will, she's even cleaning her digital photos, which to me, that's who would do that? Just give it up, realize it ain't going to happen for me, never going to happen. And I'm a neat Nick, clean Nick, all that. And it's but she's on such a roll. She's getting rid of all the stuff that her kids had left behind. And, you don't know what it can create for you. And she said she feels a sense of peace and calm and lightness. And because we're not really just talking about cleaning the linen closet. We're talking about all the stuff that goes on inside, and that sense of change and renewal and refresh, and how that can lead to other things. And of course, there's a lot of psychology about living in a very organized, sort of easy to manage environment, about how that treats
your
your
external
brain,
environment, right?
and how you can move forward. So little things can create big change. And that's really the biggest learning there. And everybody can reinvent. Everybody can learn to reinvent whatever it is you want to do. You just have to learn how to go about it.
Little things can create big change. I think that's
Huge.
so huge. And I think that is such a great thing to end on, because it's not the big, huge steps. It's not this albatross. It's one step at a time. I love it.
Yep.
Thank you very much, my wise woman, for spending time with us today. I think this was really, really beneficial. I think people will really get a lot out of it.
Awesome. Well, come visit us and learn about how to do tiny changes at Covey Club.